Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. We start today's story at a water park cafe where a simple beer order turns into a screaming match, a flying drink, and a very satisfying walk of shame courtesy of security. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Beer rage at the water park. This happened a few years ago, but every time I think about it, my blood pressure spikes. At the time, I was 19 and working at a very popular water park stationed at the cafe in the main pool area. The job was simple enough. We sold drinks, snacks, and beer from the tap. Most of the guests were fun, the regulars were friendly, and the work was easy money. Until this guy showed up. It was a busy afternoon when a group of regulars walked in, laughing and chatting like usual. I put on my standard customer service smile and called out, "Hi there, what can I get you all?" The first few people in the group ordered and went to grab a table. Then the last guy in line stepped up, someone I hadn't seen before. From the moment he opened his mouth, I could tell he was going to be a problem. His tone was sharp, his smirk was smug, and he treated me like I was personally inconveniencing him by existing. "Beer," he barked. I went to pour his drink, and of course the tap kicked right at the bottom of the keg. "Sorry, sir," I said politely. "This one just ran out. It'll only take me a moment to swap it out." He rolled his eyes. "You can just give me the last bit from the tap. It's fine." "I'm sorry," I replied, keeping my smile plastered on. "I can't serve that. It's against policy. It's mostly foam at this point." "I don't want to wait. Just give it to me." I repeated my explanation, turned to swap the keg, and when I turned back, I saw him reaching across the counter, grabbing the cup I'd left under the tap to catch the last drops. Before I could even get a word out, he was walking away, sipping from the cup like he'd just been handed it. I stood there completely stunned. Then I asked my manager if I should charge him for it. "Yep," my manager said without hesitation. "He took beer. That's theft if we don't ring it up." So I charged it to his tab. About 10 minutes later, he stormed back to the counter. "I'd like my beer now," he said flatly. "Of course, sir," I said, forcing my best customer service voice. "I'll just add it to your tab and pour it for you." He slammed his hand on the counter. "What do you mean, add it to my tab? I already ordered it." "Well," I explained, "you grabbed the previous one from behind the counter before I could serve you properly, so I had to charge you for it." He went red. "You incompetent girl, I asked for a beer and you didn't give it." "You walked away with a cup of beer," I reminded him, still trying to keep my cool. "It was the end of the keg. You were going to throw it out anyway," he roared. "You young idiots are so incompetent. Do you even have a brain in your head?" By now, people were staring. His friends came over, embarrassed, and tried to calm him down. "Hey man, relax," one of them said. "We'll pay for your beer, no big deal." That just made him angrier. "No, if she's going to charge me, I want a full glass." "Fine." "Very well, sir," I said sweetly. "I can absolutely do that." I poured him just under half a glass, more than what he'd taken earlier, and slid it across the counter. He glared at me. "What's this?" "Your beer, sir." "This isn't even close to full," he yelled. "My previous cup had way more than that missing, you useless little—" "Sir," I said, cutting him off, "I gave you more than what you were missing." He grabbed the cup, sneered at me, and before I could blink, he threw it at me. It hit me square in the chest, cold beer soaking into my shirt. The plastic cup clattered to the floor. The entire cafe went silent. I didn't say a word. I just turned, walked to my manager, and explained what had just happened. Manager's face went stone cold. He marched out to the patio where the guy was still shouting at his friends, "Sir, you're done here. Leave the water park now or I'll call security." The man tried to argue, but security was already on the way. Within 5 minutes, he was escorted out of the park, still yelling, and banned for the rest of the season. When I went back to work, dripping beer, his embarrassed friends sheepishly came to the counter, handed me cash for the drinks, and apologized on his behalf. That was the last time I ever saw him. Word got around, and apparently he was so furious about being banned that he refused to come back even the following summer. I got sent home early with pay that day, plus free lunch from the snack bar. He stole that first beer, then had the audacity to come back and demand more? What a weird person. Tormenting a 19-year-old bartender on top of it all only makes it worse. You couldn't treat him that way, and he knew it. And being female, he knew you were not likely to punch him in the parking lot later. People who pick on those without recourse only show their deep insecurity and weakness. And our second story. I followed the manager's orders, then let her deal with the mess. I was working a closing shift at McDonald's, and at the end of the night, this night in particular, I was in grill. It was getting late and we were slow, so I started minimizing what we had in stock and was going to cook the rest of the food to order for the last half hour of my shift. The closing manager came up to the table to see what I had and told me to fill the trays because we aren't closed yet. I tried to explain to her what I was doing and she didn't listen to a word I said. So I did what she asked. I turned back on the second heated cabinet and told the person I was in grill with to do what she said and fill the trays. He looked at me confused and I told him that she wanted the trays full. She can deal with the waste at the end of the night. So that's what we did. We filled the trays up with food as if we were lunch rush since that's what she wanted. At the end of the night, I emptied out all the full trays into the bucket and gave it to her with sheet to fill out how much waste we had, and she tried to make me count it. I told her, I'm not closing manager, it's your job to count it. Have fun, and finished closing down the grill. Oh, she was pissed. The next day, my GM asked what had happened, and I told her. All she said was never to do it again. I never worked a closing shift with that manager after that. Probably the same manager that would be sitting in the office all shift only to finally come out at the end of the night to start micromanaging the employees actually working. And our next story. When the cops say, open up. I just had to share this story somewhere because it's a beautiful display of karma, and it didn't take that long. My wife and I moved into our very first apartment/own place back in October 2024. Most of our neighbors are actually fine. We don't talk to them or make friends, but they don't cause issues. For context, our apartment recently got a new manager after years of a very neglectful one before we moved in, so things are slowly improving and getting whipped back into shape. Now, there's one neighbor who's always given us sketchy vibes. She doesn't live directly across from us, but just one door down on the opposite side. Her doormat says, "Come back with a warrant," which is telling. One time I heard her out on her patio yelling into her phone super loudly, "They're profiling me. Even the sheriff thinks so." Okay, lady, not sure why the entire complex needs to hear your personal drama, but go off, I guess. She has 2 kids, a 4-year-old boy who plays with stones. He throws them all over the breezeway path, and it's never cleaned up, and a monster of a teenage daughter who gave us the first real issue. To explain briefly, the daughter's big truck was parked smack in the middle of the lot, blocking multiple spaces. My father-in-law and I were returning from a short Walmart trip and couldn't find anywhere else to park other than this neighbor's spot. We pulled in, unloaded in not more than 2 minutes, and here comes the teenager. She immediately had a snotty attitude. "You can't park there, that's my mom's spot." I explained about the truck blocking the way, and she flipped me off before driving away. I confronted the mother, who said she would talk to her daughter, but it didn't feel like much was going to be done. She just acted really weird. Not all there, honestly. Another weird detail, they had both a Ring camera and one of those fancy keypad lock devices on their door. In a small country town, no one else had stuff like that. Things got even weirder. She started letting a neighbor's cat into her house. The cat clearly didn't want anything to do with her and would immediately run back upstairs where it lives and would stare rudely at my wife through her window. My wife walks with a cane due to a knee injury that hasn't healed, and this woman would gawk at her like she was some circus freak. It pissed me off so much I almost knocked on her door to ask what her problem was, but we decided to wait. Fast forward to last week. My wife and I were at home in the evening when we heard loud knocking on one of our neighbor's doors with the infamous, "Police, open up!" From our patio, we could see it was indeed the weird neighbor. My wife and I were laughing our butts off inside. Turns out she was arrested. Here's what we found out. She's a repeat offender. She was arrested in a nearby town a few years ago and served jail time for child endangerment and using illegal substances. This time, she was charged with possession and distribution of illegal substances, child endangerment, illegal possession of a firearm. She's a convicted felon. On one hand, it's sad that such trash lives in our otherwise peaceful little town. On the other hand, I'm glad she's gone. With a new manager, it's unlikely she'll be allowed to stay, even if she somehow gets the charges dropped. Our lease is very strict about criminal behavior. Here's hoping we never see her or her bratty kids again. The whole situation feels like your neighborhood collectively leveled up. One less dangerous, chaotic person making everyone uncomfortable. And the fact that her removal happened fast, public, and loud enough for the whole complex to hear? That's the kind of ending that makes you pour yourself a drink and enjoy the silence. And our last story. They built a warehouse on my land, and I didn't even know. I own a piece of property in North Carolina, just outside a small city that's been slowly expanding over the last decade. It used to be farmland with an old but sturdy house on it that my family had owned for generations. I live out of state now, and between work and life, I hadn't been able to visit for 8 years. No one had been living there for about a year and a half. A few weeks ago, I finally made the trip back. I thought I'd check on the place, maybe make plans to fix it up or rent it out. I wasn't prepared for what I found. When I pulled up where my house used to be, there was nothing there. The house was gone, completely torn down. In its place, a massive construction site. Excavators, trucks, a half-dug foundation, men in hard hats shouting over each other. I got out of my car, stunned, and waved down one of the workers. "Hey," I called, "what's going on here?" The guy barely looked up. "Warehouse and office park going up," he said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "This is my property," I shouted, panic creeping into my voice. "I never sold this land." He shrugged. "Talk to the foreman." The foreman wasn't any more helpful. "Look, I just followed the plans I'm given," he said, clearly annoyed at me standing in his way. "You'll have to take it up with the developer." I went back to my car shaking with anger. My family had paid taxes on this property for a century. I'd been paying taxes every single year since I inherited it, and yet here I was staring at a giant hole where my grandfather's house used to be. When I got back to my hotel, I pulled up the county GIS website, and that's when I realized something was very, very wrong. The property was no longer listed under my name. I felt sick. The next morning, I called a local attorney. After looking into it, he called me back with the worst news. "There's been a foreclosure," he said. "According to county records, the property was sold at a tax auction 2 years ago." "That's impossible," I said. "I've been paying the taxes." He dug deeper and found out what had happened. The taxes I'd been faithfully paying every year were being applied to another parcel of land owned by a relative, a completely different piece of property. Meanwhile, the taxes on my land were showing up as unpaid. And the delinquent notice, it hadn't even been sent to me. It was mailed to my late uncle, who used to live on the property but had passed away shortly before. Because my uncle and I have similar names and because of some miscommunication between departments, no one thought to send a notice to my out-of-state address, even though they clearly had it on file for the regular tax bills. It felt like a nightmare. My attorney told me we might have a case because some of the foreclosure procedures hadn't been strictly followed. But prepare yourself, he said. This would be a long, expensive battle, and there's no guarantee you'll get the land back. Meanwhile, he reached out to the developer. To their credit, they paused construction while the dispute was being reviewed. Then they restarted, then they paused again. It became clear they didn't want to get dragged into a lengthy lawsuit that could hold up their project indefinitely. Eventually, they came to the table with an offer. It wasn't easy to accept. This land had been in my family for over 100 years, but I also wasn't prepared to spend the next 5 years fighting everyone from the county to the developer just to maybe win. So we negotiated a settlement. They offered me a sum that was more than fair for the property's current market value, more than I could have gotten if I'd simply sold it myself. They also agreed to cover all my attorney's fees and add a premium for the emotional distress and demolition of the house. In exchange, I agreed not to challenge the foreclosure or try to reclaim the land. When the paperwork was signed, I drove out to the site one last time. The house was long gone, the bulldozers were already laying the foundation for the warehouse, and there was no turning back. I sat there for a while, letting it sink in. I was angry, bitter, sad, but also relieved. At least I hadn't walked away empty-handed. At least someone had been forced to pay for their mistake. And the county, they got a very public scolding from my attorney in the final settlement letter. They now have to update their delinquent notice procedures to ensure that future owners actually get notified before land is sold out from under them. I may have lost my family's land, but the people who let this happen had to write me a very big check. And they won't be able to pull this stunt so easily ever again. Forcing the county to change their notice procedures means you likely save someone else from the exact same nightmare down the road. And you got every dime of attorney's fees and damages covered, meaning They didn't just take your land, they paid you extra for the privilege. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.